Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Jake Browning with me, and I'm super excited to highlight his story. So Jake is currently an NFL quarterback, and in his story, you're going to hear a lot about determination and grit and what it takes to get to succeed and compete at the highest level. So Jake, thanks so much for being on today, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So growing up, um, your dad was a quarterback himself. And so talk a little bit about having that parental, we'll call it guidance, even from a young age and what that looked like for you.
Yeah, so my dad never really pushed me towards a specific sport or anything. His thing always to us growing up was you just have to have something outside of school that you work hard towards. So,
Yeah.
it ended up working out that I liked football, but even for like my sister, she did gymnastics. I have another sister who does extra math and basketball stuff, and so it was always you always had to have something you were working towards, and developing basically a work ethic towards. So for me, it was football, and like you said, he did play. Played at Oregon State in the late '80s, early '90s, and he'll be the first to tell you they weren't very good back then, but he was always was and still is kind of a guidance, I guess you could say mentor, but he's basically just uh, been someone I can go to on a lot of different things, whether that's football related, relationships related, school, whatever it is. He was a great resource for me, um, but I got to make sure that he doesn't fall into the helicopter parent um, role. And that was not the case at all. He's very much behind the scenes, kind of believes that this is your life, you're making your own decisions, I'm here for you if you need me, but I have my own life to live. I'm not living yours.
Yeah.
So that was always really nice, allowed me to make my own mistakes, and was there to kind of say, okay, here's some little things you can do differently, or this, or whenever I was seeking out advice, he was always there, but he never was giving the advice unsolicited, basically, like
Yeah.
the stereotypical helicopter parent. So
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely let me develop my own personality and my own path.
My head goes to the movie Friday Night Lights and Varsity Blues, right? Where you got those parents that are just controlling. Not that parent though.
Yeah, I think the quarterbacks also get that stereotype even more so, and I think some of the coaches I've played for said that my dad's pretty much the polar opposite, and that's been nice. It kind of let me be my own person, but was
Yeah.
always there for me and towed that line of being there for me, but not being, having his thumb over me and trying to live through me or anything like that. It was quite the opposite.
Yeah. Now, a story that really resonated with me about you was as a young guy, you wanted to go and play at this football camp, and your dad said, well, you can go play, but you need to earn some money to be able to pay for this football camp. So, talk about 10-year-old you doing some work so you could go to this football camp.
Yeah. So it was. I always played starting when I was 8, and always played quarterback. And so there was a local high school coach who I'm sure we'll get to talking about, but he was ended up being playing a huge role in my life, Troy Taylor. But when I was 10, there was a he was doing these things on Sunday only for an hour or so. But I think my dad was basically like, wanting me to realize like, no, not everybody gets to go do this.
Yeah.
So uh, I think if anything in my mind at 10, it made me think, okay, this is unique, or this is like something special. This isn't just, like going and playing pickup basketball with my friends. This is something a little bit above and beyond. So I think he wanted me to appreciate that. And, was I working crazy hours or anything to pay it off? No, it was probably, one or two things a week, and probably really just some leverage to say, okay, well, if you want to do this, you got to clean this up, or you got to do that. And probably things I would have done anyways, but it just kind of puts an emphasis on, hey, this is kind of something not everybody gets to do. It was 50 bucks, I think, for the hour or so. It
Yeah.
wasn't anything super expensive, but I think it was more just putting an emphasis on, hey, like if we're going to go do this, we're going to put the effort into it, and you're going to put the effort into it. I think it made me take it a little bit more seriously, as much as you can at 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the thing that I like is, it's amazing to me some of the most successful folks or people that have reached, levels of success in their chosen fields, a lot of them have a story about when they were younger, having to really earn something, right? And I think subliminally, or maybe it was, planted at a moment, it's like, all right, if I really want to get things in life, it's going to require me to do an uncommon thing, right? It's not common that parents make their kids work for money to go to a football camp. But when you do that, to your point, there's more buy-in, there's more ownership involved with that experience. So that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I think like I said, I think sometimes those things can be made to be a lot more than they were, as
Yeah.
far as trying to make me sound like I was on some regiment when I was 10 years old. I mean, that was definitely not the case, but it's just if my dad's gonna go spend some time on Sunday taking me to something, the quarterback thing, and I think it just all kind of tied into you got to be working hard at something,
Yep.
and if you're not doing that, then we have an issue. But as long as I think even if I wanted to go play piano, and there was a person that was teaching piano on Sundays for an hour, it would have been the same thing. So I think it kind of puts a value on it's not something that he's making me do, it's something I'm getting to go do.
Mm.
And I think that difference in my mind at 10 years old kind of clicked a little bit. And I'm sure kind of tricked me into it almost, but it was I think in hindsight it was good and something I'll probably do with my kids too.
You bet. Now you hinted at it. So you were developing a relationship with a high school coach, and you, I mean, let's just be honest here. You come in as what, a 14-year-old in high school, and you're playing against 17, 18-year-olds. That's a big like maturity gap.
Yeah.
Physically the way you are at 14 versus where you are 17, 18. So talk about your transition from grade school into, those first couple of years of high school.
Yeah. So I think for me, I mean, the maturity part was never that much of an issue. I don't know what it is, but I've never really uh, had to deal with anything like that. I've always kind of been ahead of the curve a little bit on that stuff, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but my thing was I grew late. So I hit puberty after everybody else. So, when everyone else is growing, I did not. And so my freshman year, I split time with another guy. Kind of went back and forth, and then going into my sophomore year, said, okay, it's gonna be an open competition, and that's I'd already had a relationship with the high school coach who kind of helped me with some little quarterback stuff here and there, once a week, starting like pretty much at 10. So I knew him a little bit there, but that was kind of the first time where he was my primary coach.
Yeah.
Uh, I'll never forget. And we're sitting in the weight room. I just finished up freshman year. I told the basketball coach like, "Hey, I'm not playing basketball. I'm focusing on football." He had kind of said to me like, "You're barely even starting on freshman football. Like, what are you thinking?"
Wow.
I remember sitting in this weight room. My high school coach goes, "Hey, look, we don't care what age you are. We don't care, what you look like. We don't care anything. The best players are going to play, and if that means you're 15 or you're 18, I don't care.
Mm.
And so, some of you may not like that. There's another school in the city you should probably transfer to." And I
Yeah.
remember just thinking, like, here we go. This is awesome. And we're just going to compete it out. And that, that was probably a 8 month competition, and ended up getting named the starter going into my sophomore year, a week before the first game, and kind of took off from there. But I mean, it definitely
Yeah.
started with him setting the premise of, hey, look, best guy wins, and like I don't care if you're a senior, I don't care like for me, if you're splitting time on the freshman team, you're if you're the best guy, you're going to play. So
Yes.
it was nice to have that, and it kind of took off from there.
So I want to ask you about that. I think so many times people say, "Well, I'm not good enough yet," right? And having that mentality, like I'm a starting quarterback. I'm just not good enough to be the starting quarterback yet as a freshman, right? Doesn't mean I couldn't be as a sophomore. So what really switched gears for you between that freshman and that sophomore year to make the leap of splitting time as a freshman to, hey, I put in the work, and now as a sophomore, I'm getting the opportunity to start?
Yeah, so I've never had an issue with getting the task done as far as like the extra work and all
Yeah.
that. I think really the biggest thing was I had a coach who's like, okay, you got all this, here's more tasks than you can do. Do as many as you can. And so, I mean, we practiced a lot, we threw a lot, took a lot of reps, did a lot of competition. And I think it was, looking back at it, if I was just kind of, I want to worry about football in August after and play 4 other sports, that probably wouldn't have been the best thing in the world. But for
Yeah.
me, I've always been able to focus on one thing really in depth, and then the
Mm,
rest of the things I'm pretty laid back on. So my one thing turned into football, and
yeah.
so it was kind of a perfect match with the high school coach who wanted to run it like a college program, and then me, I was all for it. I kind of saw there had been some quarterbacks before me that had followed the same thing and had done well and won a lot of games and been very good high school quarterbacks. And so for me, here's the position that everybody wants. Here's the roadmap on how to get it, and here's an opportunity and a competition to get it. So it was just leading up to that. I had always stayed after, done extra throwing or done extra meetings and stuff like that. And finally, it was like, all right, here we go. And that was kind of how it went. And took it one day at a time and ended up getting named the starter. But I would say that transition, it was the roadmap was laid out in front of me a little bit clearer
Yeah.
than before, where you're kind of like, am I getting better by doing this? I don't know. But then I had a coach who I trusted, who had past success,
Yeah.
who then kind of laid the roadmap like, hey, if you do all these things, you're going to get better. Like, it's just a matter of time. And so I've always I've never had an issue putting in, once I know what the roadmap is, once I've never had an issue following it.
Yeah. Well, and I want to highlight that. I think so many times, you look at somebody and you're like, gosh, I want to have the, accomplishments they have. I want to do the things that they've been able to do. But are you willing to do the things they had to do to get to that point? Right. Are you willing to say, you know what, I'm going to stop playing basketball. I'm going to stop playing running track and I'm strictly going to focus on football? Or are you going to say, hey, I'm going to stay after and do an extra hour of workouts each and every day? So talk a bit about that for you in those high school years where you're doing the uncommon thing by, dedicating yourself to one, sport and one position opposed to being willing to play all the other things and having your time divided.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was kind of a personality fit. Like I said, I've never really been someone that can float, 6 different tasks. I'm really good at being really locked in and focused and putting all my time into about one or two,
Yeah.
and then everything else is kind of, like I'm the first one to forget my sweatshirt or wallet somewhere. But if you ask me, what's tomorrow's install for football, I'll have that memorized. So I think it was a personality fit a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think as far as like having the people before me in high school that had done well, it just gave validity to, hey, if you win this job, follow the roadmap and kind of do as this Troy Taylor says, there's some success to be had. And so I think I had built up some endurance as far as like what my dad, with you always having to be working hard at something, you kind of build up that stamina for, okay, practice is over, but I'm going to do a little bit extra, or,
Yeah.
I'm going to do a little bit extra meetings, or just kind of doing that thing to separate yourself. And so I think it was kind of a match, all those things coming together at once kind of set me up for a good high school career, with being matched with a coach who knew what to do with that extra stamina for trying to improve.
Absolutely. Now, an interesting opportunity comes about for you, and you get the chance to go to a Boise State camp. And at this Boise State camp, you impress a couple people. Talk about heading to Boise State football camp.
Yeah, so I was going to, I think I'd been offered by Utah at that point. Um, and my high school coach said, hey, I didn't go to camps. I didn't do Elite 11 or anything like that. But he said, hey, I think if you go to this camp and do well, I think that they're going to offer you. And so went there, and yeah, it was a 3-day camp and did well. And I remember flying home, and in our airport, there's the escalator going down. My dad was down there waiting for me. He had a little payday candy bar. And I remember he said, hey, Coach Taylor called. They're gonna offer you. And at the time, Chris Peterson was there and Jonathan Smith, but getting offered by Boise State was, kind of a stamp on the West Coast as far as like checking a lot of boxes. Because people kind of know how Coach Pete operates, and so it didn't end up going to Boise State, but started to form a relationship that way. And it really kind of helped my recruiting take off and
Yeah.
getting, anybody that's been through it, the first couple offers, there's no one has pressure to be the first, but they don't want to be the last.
Yes.
First two or three go, those are kind of the first two dominoes, and then a lot of people start offering you. You start to have some more options. So, yeah, that was definitely a big. I think it was a big weekend to kind of get that over that second domino to fall, where I could kind of have some more options after that.
Yeah. Now, the reason that you might be getting some college attention is Jake ends up setting the high school record for most touchdowns in a career. I think it was 229. And in that senior year, you guys end up going 16-0, state champions. Talk about all of the work that goes into it, that body of work leading up to that senior year, and then having that ultimate goal of wanting to win a state champion, right? Everyone wants to do that. Not
Yeah,
everyone gets to do it. So talk about that senior year.
yeah. So I mean, I had a lot of guys. I think kind of like my high school career was the perfect ending to a lot of things coming together.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think there's probably about 5 or 6 guys on that team that I played with in junior football since I was 8. So we'd all been playing together for a long time. The 2 years before that, my sophomore and junior year, we would go undefeated and then lose to De La Salle in the last game. And so just kind of made our program improve as far as doing more weight stuff, doing more speed training things, and trying to get over that hump.
Yeah.
So my senior year, I mean, they changed the rules. We didn't play De La Salle, but we played in the state championship, and we didn't really have a close game. I think our closest game we won was probably a lot too little, but we just had a lot of guys that my sophomore year, I think we had like 8. Seemed like we had like 8 sophomores playing on varsity and
Wow.
playing a lot of snaps. So by the time I was a senior, I just felt like everything was moving really slow. Our offense was really good. Me and Coach Taylor were on the same page. We had a really good offense, really good defense, and we kind of just took it to people. But it was 3 years of hard work, really 4 years of hard work, and a lot of football played by a lot of people that kind of paid off at the end, and probably go down as one of the better teams and probably the best team in Sacramento history. And so it's pretty cool to just even be a part of.
Yeah.
Just kind of seeing, I think it's good when you're in high school to have something like that happen. You're like, okay, I put in a lot of work
Mm.
and this paid off, and here's this feeling of it paying off, and this is kind of addicting. And
Yeah.
so I think a lot of us felt that in high school, and it was pretty special.
Yeah. So you talked about earlier, went to the Boise State camp. It was awesome to get, the offer, and it opened up some doors. However, you end up deciding to go to Washington. So talk about the decision-making process and what ended up being the catalyst to picking Washington for you.
Yeah, so I grew up watching the Pac-12, and
Yeah.
and grew up watching the Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart, some of those guys being a California kid. So I always kind of wanted to play in the Pac-12. I definitely liked the coaches at Boise State uh, before they moved, but I remember thinking after my junior year, during my junior year, I wanted to commit before my senior years because I didn't want to have anything. I just wanted to make a decision and be done with it.
Yep.
And it just so happens quarterbacks got to commit early and stuff. So remember, I think it was probably in like February or so, maybe even January. Coach Pete takes a job in Washington, so all those coaches go over there, and I remember thinking like, okay, that could be something pretty cool to be a part of.
Yeah.
I remember my high school coach saying, it takes 3 years to establish a culture, and your third year would be your sophomore year there, and so that could be probably your best option. And
Yeah.
my dad played against the '91 Washington national championship team, so I remember when I got offered there, he's like, oh wow, okay, that's pretty cool. And it was in the Pac-12. It was close enough to home. Went there. I went on a visit there, Washington State, and on like a short unofficial decal. I liked it. I really liked it. Felt comfortable there. So just committed and didn't visit anywhere else and didn't even think about it past that point.
Yeah. Now, as you transition into college, once again, you we talked about earlier, 14 to 17, 18 is a jump. Well, so is 18 to sometimes you're competing with guys that are mid 20s, right?
Right.
There's some guys that might have been around a couple redshirt years, a couple transfers and whatnot. Talk about that jump for you, but also something I want you to highlight is, you end up being a 4-year starter. What it is like to be that freshman and gain the respect of the locker room, right? Because there's guys that have been around 3 years, right? They got relationships, and we
Yeah.
all want to win, but there's always that human element of, but that's my friend, and I don't really know this freshman. So talk a little bit about gaining the trust and the confidence from your teammates.
Yeah. So I graduated early from high school and got to Seattle. I think it was January of 2015.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, I mean, it kind of just, I was very fortunate to have a successful high school career, but I also had, like I said, a really advanced coach that kind of showed me what it was like. And I mean, we ran our program like a college.
Mm.
And so it was a big benefit to have that. And so I really just took that and that kind of system that we had at Folsom as far as getting ready for games and stuff like that, and applied it to college. And so learned the playbook quickly. I think I came in. I got to move inside. Just
Yeah.
started hailing.
Gotta love our Midwest weather.
All right.
We passed that on to you. We had that last night, so you get it today.
Here we go. But I forget the question. What was the question?
No, you're good, man. So just, showing up as a freshman, gaining that trust and that confidence from your teammates. And you just mentioned how you had come into school a little bit early and, had been playing for a coach that was prepping you for college.
Yeah. So played for a coach in high school. Kind of knew. Like I said, ran it like a college, and so it wasn't something completely foreign that all of a sudden football takes up a lot more of your time. And so I just pretty much did that. Saw an opportunity to play as a freshman, the returning starter, medically retired right before spring ball. And so it was kind of right back to like my sophomore year. It was, here we go, and one day at
Yeah.
a time, one practice at a time, and just kind of obsess over it basically. And as far as winning the respect of the locker room and stuff like that, I mean, none of these other quarterbacks had played a ton in games either.
Yeah.
And I mean, as far as personality, like, I come across pretty well polished and stuff, but I can scrap with the best of them. And I'm not afraid to say whatever, or do whatever,
Yeah.
in order to win a game. And I think that always kind of goes well in a locker room where it's like, okay, I look a certain way, and I definitely look like I wouldn't, spout back, but I'm not. I was definitely, maybe it was dumb, but at 19, I was not afraid to step into a locker room and be like, okay, yeah, I'm just as good as anybody else here. Like, here we go. Like, let's scrap it out. And I think people respond well to that as far as all the leadership stuff. It's at the end of the day, it's okay. Well, what kind of guy are you when you've gotten punched in the mouth,
Yeah.
figuratively, and literally?
Yeah.
So it's, I've never really had an issue with that as far as being able to respond to that. And I think people can see that, uh, even if I'm young or whatever.
Yeah. Now, something I'm always intrigued by is where does someone's confidence come from? Because if we put our confidence in just the outcome of a win or a loss, well, how does that impact me going into the next game? If we put our confidence into just the last game or that last little body of work, well, that might not work. But what I found is a lot of high performers, they get their confidence from the entire body of work, right? Like, man, I've been at this since I was 8 years old. Like, dude, I've been doing everything I can to get to this point. So that one interception or that one bad game doesn't, rattle me. Talk about that for you and just having that confidence, that poise.
Yeah, I think if you live on your past accomplishments, that's an emotional, or your most recent accomplishment. That's an emotional roller coaster,
Mhm. Yep.
and there's nothing about an emotional roller coaster that promotes doing well in
Yeah.
a physically and mentally demanding sport. And so for me, it's always been preparation. I mean, yeah, I got some confidence in my natural ability, and skills that I've developed. But it's also, I remember in college, last game I started was in college, so I really am going off that. But I think it was really like during the week I would prepare as hard as I could. By the time I got to Saturday, I got confidence knowing like, okay, I'm the most prepared person on this field.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you gotta just go. Now you just gotta go play. You've done everything else,
Yep.
and that's kind of where my confidence came from. And then the rest of it is just executing and being able to stay focused on it, not getting too up or down. And I think I naturally have that a little bit.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think the preparation is kind of where you get some of that confidence from.
That's awesome. And anyone listening, you may not be able to relate as a Division One quarterback or a pro quarterback, but you can apply that to your life, right? You think about someone that's maybe a high end sales performer or someone that's running a company. Hey, maybe you had a bad month or you had a bad week in your sales
Yeah.
role, but guess what? Look at what you've done the last 5 years, the last 10 years. Look at how your
Well,
company's performed, right? It's very transferable mindset.
yeah, I think the main thing would just be, okay, I've had a bad month in sales or I played a bad game. It's like, okay, well, you got two options. It's either get ready for the next one or quit.
Mm.
The second one doesn't sound great. So you really, process of elimination. It's like, all right, well, I got this process. I think for me, it's establishing like, okay, what does a weekly routine look like that I can set myself up to
Yeah.
feel pretty good walking into the game. I think it's the same thing can be applied in anything. Like, okay, what does the best Monday look like for me to have the best Saturday?
Mm.
Or, what does the best Wednesday look like? And kind of just sticking with that and refining that over and over. Like, okay, I had a bad Saturday. Okay, well, what did I do Monday through Friday that I can change? That's really all I can control. And
Yeah.
so I think that's kind of a big thing for me is like sticking with what you can control and sticking to it and actually doing it.
Love it. Now, you mentioned earlier, you and your coach had kind of talked about, well, if you head to Washington, they got new coaching staff. So it usually takes 3 years. First year wouldn't be your year playing. Second year would be your freshman year. And we get to sophomore year. And sophomore year, to start with the end of the season, you guys played a big bowl game and you get ranked sixth in a big voting process. Talk a little bit about that sophomore year and that really being, once again, another takeoff moment for you.
Yeah, so kind of similar to high school, we had a lot of young guys play, a lot of true freshmen play. My freshman year, I started I think every game but one. I
Yep.
got hurt. A left tackle was a true freshman. A running back was a true freshman. We were getting John Ross back from injury.
Yeah.
Played a lot of young guys on defense. We just had a lot of people coming back,
Yeah.
and so I remember we finished my freshman year. We lost a lot of games by like 3 or 2 or at the very last. We were always in it. And then we kind of went on a win streak to end it, won our bowl game, and kind of felt some momentum going into the next season.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were really good on defense. Like I said, we got John Ross back. I had a year under my belt. Um, and yeah, it was a special year. We kind of took off, and that was kind of the first time Washington had been kind of in some of those conversations. And one of I think us and Oregon were the only ones that had played in a playoff game. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it was definitely special. It was a cool thing to be a part of and kind of see it. I got there right after Coach Pete's first season and kind of seeing what that was like and being a part of the whole transition and playing a role in that transition was pretty cool.
Yeah. Now, when you finish sixth in the Heisman voting, like you did as a sophomore, going into a junior year, then I would imagine there's a little bit of pressure and there's a lot of buzz going into that. Maybe not pressure that you'd put on yourself, but people talking, news media outlets saying things. So talk about the mental preparation going from sophomore year into junior year, knowing, hey, we had some expectations probably from the outside, but also I would imagine from the inside as well. Like inside the program, it's like, hey, we're turning the corner. We're really turning this into, a great program.
Yeah, yeah. I think you always want to not ride off past accomplishments and kind of take on the next season as a new thing. I think for me it was yeah. You're definitely getting more attention. I've always kind of lived like a normal person, so that was weird getting recognized all of a sudden and some different things like that. But kept a pretty tight, close knit circle and hung out with a lot of teammates, so you're not really exposed to that too much. Um, and I think we had a coaching staff around that was definitely reminding us like, okay, you're gonna be a one hit wonder, or is this gonna be a program now?
Yeah.
And I think having coaches that are setting that standard, I've always kind of thought the same way. Kind of like, okay, what's the next challenge? What's the next challenge? And so, yeah, I mean, I think obviously didn't make the playoff or win the Pac-12 again, but we're able to have a couple, at least junior year we didn't win it. We're able to have a good junior year, and my production fell off a little bit, but it's also just we're in the business of winning games, not putting up stats, and so for us to just turned in, we ran the ball more, and is what it is. Still won a lot of games.
And I want to highlight that because one, as I've learned your story, two, as I'm just getting to chat with you today and everyone's hearing, you're not the quarterback that comes across with a huge ego that you wear on your sleeve. Inside, you're probably a pretty confident guy. We'll talk about that, but it doesn't come across on the sleeve. But it was a whatever it takes for the team to win mentality. And you and I both know a ton of people that probably don't share that, right? Hey, if it's good for me and it's decent for the team, let's do that. Versus if it's good for the team and it's decent for me, I don't want to do that. So, what about you? Whether it's something that was instilled in you as a kid by a coach, just allowed you to have that perspective that hey, it's team first and really me second, second to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, you obviously want to put up the numbers and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
it's frustrating when it's not happening that way, just because that's kind of your sense of achievement or whatever. But I think I was surrounded by coaches that winning was the main thing. Um, I was surrounded by players that winning was the main thing, and it was kind of a contagious thing in the locker room. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think I was super unique in that. I think Coach Pete did a good job putting together a locker room and a culture where that was kind of the case, and I don't have a great answer for you, but it's just one of those things that just it is what it is, and I would have loved to throw for 500 touchdowns or whatever, and had another year like my sophomore year, but it didn't happen. It wasn't lack of effort,
Yeah.
and so at the end of the day, I think the same thing that gives you confidence is the same thing that gives you peace of mind. It's I worked as hard as I could,
Yeah.
and I'm not sitting here. There's a couple of things you wish you could do this different, I wish you could do that different, but that's with 5 years of hindsight.
Yep.
And in the moment, you're like, I couldn't have worked any harder. I couldn't have done anything more. And so, what I throw for, and what we win, we win. But I think for me, I've always kind of gone back to, okay, what did my weeks look like leading up to that? What did my off season look like leading up to that? And you know, but I feel good about it. So at the end of the day, if we're 10-0 and 0-10, there's only so much I can control, and you can't play a perfect game. So it's really just focusing on, what does my preparation look like? What can I change that I can actually control?
Yeah.
And for me, I got some peace of mind knowing like, hey, I put everything I had into 4 years of college football, playing early, dealing with injuries, dealing with success, dealing with the highs and lows of a fan base,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, there's only so many people that have done it, so I don't really need to sit here and listen to all these people tell me how to do it. I
Mm.
did it. Put everything I had into it, and I got no regrets on the thing. And people can say what they want and have their criticisms. They're entitled to that, but they weren't there doing every day. They were there on Saturday to see the result. But I think some people in the locker room would tell you like, I worked my ass off, and we all
Yep.
did. And so, I got peace of mind when I go to bed knowing that I did that.
Yeah. Now, something you mentioned earlier, and I want to kind of tie it into the highs and the lows, is you mentioned, I tried to keep pretty close circle. And I think for a lot of people, they listen to advice from everybody. unsolicited or solicited, right? Hey, this person I ran into at Jimmy John's gave me this feedback, and this coach gave me that feedback, and it just gets in their head and it kind of throws them off of their game. For you, what did it mean, or why was it important to keep a tight knit circle? And I would imagine, but what does that look like for you today, with your circle and the people that you let in to really, impact and speak into your life?
Yeah, I mean, when I say I had a close knit circle in college, I mean, it means I still went out and I had a good time, and I
Yeah.
definitely didn't shy away from going to a bar if it's Friday night and we don't have anything in the off season. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go to a bar and have a good time just like a normal person.
Yep.
But I think that's where like gotta have a baseline of ego to some guy has a few too many drinks and starts telling me how to do what I practice doing. Like, I got enough of an ego to be like, all right, man, have a good life,
Yeah.
but I don't really care. And
Yep.
but I mean, I think for some of those years, like when production started falling off, I mean, yeah, I was listening to advice from anybody. I just filtered it, put it through my own filter of like, is this applicable? Is it legit?
Mm.
Or is this just someone speaking out of emotion?
Yeah.
And so I tried to, if it's going to make me better at football, I will listen to, you know, the dumbest person in the world if I think
Yeah.
it's applicable.
Yep.
But if I don't, then brush it off. And I think that's one thing you definitely learn how to do as a quarterback is it's the most scrutinized position. So it's like you got to kind of filter through, like, because there are people that do know what they're talking about, and I mean, some reporters even know what they're talking about, even as much as we don't like to admit it. And so kind of filtering through, like, okay, that's legit. Like, maybe I should look into that, or no, it's not. This person's just trying to get a reaction. And
Yeah.
so I think kind of going through that, and then as far as like having a circle, I think for me it's just always been about trying to. I think I really value like people just genuinely being themselves and their personalities. And
Yeah.
so, hang out with some unique personalities and stuff like that. But I think people overuse the word genuine, but for me
Mm.
it's just, can you be a normal person? Can you just
Yeah.
have a good time? Can you not really care about 500 different things? Can you not have this agenda or trying to be this social climber, anything
Yep.
like that? Can you just be enjoyable to be around? And do I feel like you have my back? And
Yeah.
so been fortunate enough to have some friends from, whether that's from back home in Folsom or Seattle or met along the way in the NFL. Been able to meet a lot of really good people that I would consider close friends, and that I think that's part of what makes this job unique. Is at any given day you could be thrown into a locker room with 100 different people you've never met, or maybe you kind of know but you don't. So you kind of got to appreciate the relationship side of it, and in order to get the most out of the enjoyment of the job.
Yeah. So over your college career, once again, you stack up some stats, man. I mean, one, Washington becomes really a powerhouse in that time frame. I mean, you guys have played against Penn State, Ohio State, right? We're competing in the for really winning the Pac-12, and we're also competing in the playoff system. So that, as a team, is great. You as an individual, you get the fourth most yards as a quarterback in Pac-12 history, and there's been some pretty good quarterbacks to go through that conference in that time frame. So it's amazing. And as I say that, that means that college comes to an end and the next phase starts, which is the NFL. Talk about what that means for you. I mean, once again, after that sophomore year, I'm sure the idea of the NFL becomes real. Like, well, I'm competing at the highest level in one of the toughest conferences in all of football. This is probably going to be an opportunity for me. Talk about, getting ready for the draft and what all that was looking like for you.
Yeah. So played the Rose Bowl, and that would have been 2019. And
Yeah.
then right after that, went down, started working with some quarterback guys in Huntington Beach, um, and kind of just the same thing. Just dived in, obsessed over it, and tried to get as much out of it as I can. And I think I was able to add some years to my career just picking up different things there. As far as one thing for me is I never played any rotational sports, so I never played baseball, I never played golf, I never played
Yeah.
tennis. So I was basically just out there throwing with all arm. And so one of my
Mm,
critiques always was that I didn't have a strong arm. And once I had an avenue, kind of a roadmap to like, okay, here's how you get a stronger arm. Because I was always pretty strong in the weight room and some of these different things. I'm like, okay, this isn't making sense. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe I
Yeah.
just don't have a strong arm.
Right.
And so, was able to work with these guys in Southern California that kind of, showed me how to get more out of my lower body and more out of my hips and core to throw. And so, yeah, I feel like I got a lot better in that short little period getting ready for the draft and made the most out of it.
Yeah. Now, draft comes and goes, the rounds come and go, and you don't hear your name called. Was that was that a surprise to you from just what you had been able to put together for a body of work? Was that something that, talking to an agent, they said, well, we're not sure where you're going to land? Or what did that look like for you? I'm sure it's an emotional time regardless, but talk a little bit about the emotions and what was going on there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, my agent told me ahead of time, like, hey, there is a chance you go undrafted, and you know, I think I don't even remember what he said, but he's like, it's a pretty real chance, and it could be as early as either a late round pick or undrafted, and either way, whatever, like we'll make it work. And so, I think that's something where, for me, I've been living 4 years in a very high pressure, basically job where I
Yeah.
don't have I have some control, but like there are some things outside of my control. So I mean, I was sitting there on draft and I'm like, hey, if they call me, great. If they don't, like, there's nothing me freaking out about. It's not gonna do anything about it. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. I'll just go wherever. I know I'm going to get signed somewhere. I know I'm
Yep.
going to have an opportunity, and so wherever that is, great. And if
Yeah.
that's early or late or undrafted, whatever, don't care.
Yep.
Well, obviously you do care. I don't want to act like I don't care about the
Right.
draft, but like, if I go early, great, that's awesome. If I go undrafted, it's an opportunity. Here we go. And so,
Yep.
I think it was more stressful. Like, my girlfriend was there, and she's, there's just some people that aren't used to, like even my family, like they're not used to
Right.
kind of like, whoa, this is chaotic. And for me, I'm kind of like, yeah, welcome to the last 4 years. Like, not that big of a deal. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, ended up going undrafted and signed with Minnesota, and yeah, kind of took off from there, and just kept applying the same thing of here we go, just go obsess over it. I've had some successes in the past that have got me to this point, but now I'm back to square one. So here we go.
Yeah. Well, so I had Chris Gronkowski on the show, and he said, honestly, going undrafted, I was a bigger fan of that than if I would have went in like the fifth, sixth, or seventh round, because then I had more of an option to see like where do I fit in on that team, right? When you get drafted, it's kind of like, well, this is where you're going to go. This is who feels like you fit best. And he goes, I had 5 or 6 different teams that had offered me to come to them, and I said, well, I think this is my best fit. So Minnesota is who you end up, mutually agreeing on. Hey, this is the best fit for me. So talk about getting into the league, and one, I mean, how amazing! What a dream come true, and just a great opportunity. But two, like you said, the story of Jake's life has been compete. Now it's time to compete. So talk about that opportunity for you.
Yeah, yeah. So when I got there, I signed there partially just because I felt like it was a good system fit. I felt like I'm not a running quarterback, and neither is Kirk Cousins, so I felt like all right, this a good fit, and
Yeah.
ended up being a great decision as far as the coaches that were there. I was able to work with Gary Kubiak, who had coached for a long time.
Yeah.
I developed a good relationship with him and learned a lot from him, just as far as how to survive in the NFL. I mean, it's a business within a business as far as trying to make it on a roster and be a quarterback. And so was able to learn a lot from him. Was able to learn a lot from Kirk. He was a very open book with me. Someone I still keep in touch with pretty regularly, and
Yeah.
was definitely very approachable for
Yeah.
someone that was going on probably he's 6 or 7 years older than me,
Yep.
and definitely didn't feel like I was bugging him ever when I asked a question. I could just ask him like, what were you thinking like on this one? Like, what made you make this decision?
Yeah.
He's always very open book on, yeah, well, I saw this and this, and it really helped me when, you're kind of lower on the depth chart. You got to be able to learn from watching someone else. And when you're watching someone else and you can ask them why they did what they did, it was very helpful. So I've always been, very appreciative um, to him for that. And then, but yeah, when I got there, there was, I think, 4 of us, and had a good OTAs, kind of scrapping it out, and then get to the preseason. They kind of say like, "Hey, yeah, you're not really going to play." And so I remember saying, is this merit based or is this something out of my control? And it's out of your control, which basically means we're hiding you to put you on P squad. So not something you really want to hear, but it's like I said, there's a lot of things. I think playing in football and especially quarterback and then playing at this level, there's some things that you have no control over. So you can go crazy losing your mind about it, or you can just be like, okay, what do I have control over, and how do I work on these things? And so that's kind of what I did. And I remember signing me to practice squad and had a quick meeting with Gary Kubiak, and he said, "Hey, here's your things that you need to do. I want you to be in the weight room a lot. I never redshirted in college, so I never had that year to just like get bigger. I was always in the middle of a season or getting ready for the season. So kind of had a redshirt year. I was able to put on some weight, get in better shape, do some of these different things that I've never really just focused on. And learn, and still able to learn a lot and be on the sideline and kind of see how it all goes and watch the interactions and play somewhat of a role in us making the playoffs that year, as far as just being helpful on the sideline. So, I learned a lot that year, but then was definitely excited for the next year, because I think you get to about week 12 on practice squad and you're like, okay, like I'm ready for another crack at this whole competition thing. And so, I think we made it to the second round of the playoffs that year, and then went into the off season and that thinking we're going to have another competition, and then COVID hit and they're like, no preseason. That was definitely tough, but I think basically my theme of my NFL career so far has been, hey, just control what you can control and take the highs and the lows, try and learn as much as you can. And, I've been on P squad for most of it. And I think that'll definitely test you mentally. I think there's a lot of ways you can go on P squad. There's the people that think I'm getting screwed and they hate the coaches, they become bitter and kind of fall into that victim mentality a little bit. And then I think there's the people that start to question themselves, like, am I actually as good as I thought I was? A lot of people that made it to this level have accomplished to a certain level, but then all of a sudden they get told, like, no, you're not good enough to be on the 53-man roster. So then they start to second guess, and then that messes with your confidence, and it's really hard to play at a high level there. And then there's the people that are just happy to be there, and they kind of fizzle out. And so I think for me, it's been navigating those three and trying to take the good parts of, hey, I'm happy to be here as far as personality wise. I try to be enjoyable to be around, be a positive person in the meeting room. Second guess myself enough to say, okay, is what the way I'm preparing, the things I'm doing, is this the best thing to do? And then the victimhood thing, like, those people play with a lot of confidence because they think nothing that I've done, I'm not here because of my own ability. I'm here because I'm getting screwed. So I think taking the good of those three personality types and avoiding the bad, we'll see. We'll see if we make the 53, but I think regardless, it's been a really good life lesson as far as, how to deal with. I don't think many people it's pretty hard to get rejected at 26 as many times as I have, and as a public of a profession and as high stakes as this profession. So I think, regardless how my NFL career ends up, I think these past 3 years have been very challenging and have made made me look inward. You're not playing, you're supporting someone else. There's, there are some things that are outside of your control that definitely play a large factor in your success. You're kind of like, all right, just got to take it for what it is. Keep the ship moving forward and keep giving everything you got. And at the end of the day, you give it all you got, and it does work out, great. If not, gave it all you got, and you got some peace of mind, and you'll take that skill set into your next career.
Yeah. Well, I want to say thanks for your time. I'm super excited for where you're at and what you're competing for now with the Bengals, one of the most exciting teams. Being here in Nebraska, we have a little bit of love for the Bengals. Your head coach, ex-starting quarterback here, and I mean Coach Taylor. This is a good meshing here, Jake. Good meshing. But no, man, super excited about your story. And once again, I just want to say thanks for you, sharing with so many people the impactful lesson of it's about competing. It's about controlling what you can control. And I love that last part, just taking a little piece of each of it, right? Stay hungry, stay confident, but enjoy what you're doing. And so I just want to say thanks again so much for being on, my man. And can't wait to have you on again here in a few years and seeing where this story has led you to.
Yeah, appreciate it. And thanks for giving me the platform to kind of share.